The story that you are about to hear is a compilation of documented true facts, featuring characters, events, or places that has played a role in shaping history. Please sit back and listen as I recite this narrative for you. Julia Wallace's murder, dubbed the locked room murder by many, has gone unsolved for over 90 years. Her body was discovered inside a locked room in her house. William Herbert Wallace was born on August 29, 1878 in Milham, Cumberland. He had a younger brother and sister. When he was 14, he dropped out of school and began working as a draper's assistant in Barrow and Furness, Lancashire. After completing his apprenticeship, he landed a job in Manchester with Messrs. Whiteway Laidlaw and Company, outfitters to the British Armed Forces, as well as the colonial, Indian, and diplomatic services. After 5 years of service, Wallace was transferred to the company's branch in Calcutta, India, where he stayed for 2 years. Wallace sought another transfer to Whiteway Laidlaw's branch in Shanghai in 1905 on the advice of his brother Joseph, who lived in the city. Wallace resigned his position and returned to England in 1907, where his left kidney was removed at Guy's Hospital due to a recurring kidney complaint. Little is known about his life after this point, until he got a job working for the Liberal Party in Harrogate, eventually rising to the position of election agent in 1911. He met Julia Dennis while he was in Harrogate. Julia Dennis was born on April 28, 1861. William and Julia married in March 1914. Due to the suspension of elections and a parliamentary truce at the outbreak of the First World War, Wallace's position as Liberal election agent in Harrogate was discontinued, and he once again found himself looking for work. He obtained a position as a collections agent with the Prudential Assurance Company in Liverpool with the reply assistance of his father. The Wallaces moved there in 1915, settling in the Anfield neighborhood. Wallace supplemented his comfortable but mundane life as a collections agent in the 1920s by lecturing part-time in chemistry at Liverpool Technical College. He enjoyed chemistry, botany, and chess, and he learned to play the violin so that he could accompany Julia, who was an accomplished pianist, in musical evenings at their home at 29 Wolverton Street, Anfield. When the murder occurred in 1931, William Herbert Wallace and his wife Julia were living in the Anfield neighborhood of Liverpool, England. Many people thought they were an unusual couple. Mr. Wallace was a 52-year-old insurance salesman and part-time chemistry lecturer who was known to be in constant pain after having a kidney removed in 1907. Julia, who was 17 years older, was rumored to be difficult and suspicious of strangers. One former friend described their marriage as loveless and strained. Mr. Wallace returned home one night in the winter of 1931 to find his wife violently beaten to death inside a locked room of a locked house at 29 Wolverton Street, Anfield, Liverpool. There was no murder weapon found, and no evidence pointed to anyone other than her husband who had access to the house. Mrs. Wallace was murdered on the evening of Monday, January 19, 1931, while Mr. Wallace was attending matches at the Liverpool Central Chess Club at the City Cafe on North John Street. He was a member of the club, but he wasn't a regular. In fact, it was his first visit there in months. He was scheduled to play that night, but it wouldn't have been the first time he missed a scheduled game. Captain Samuel Beatty answered a call and took a message from a man calling himself R.M. Qualtrough prior to Mr. Wallace's arrival at the chess club. The message informed Mr. Wallace that the caller wished to discuss insurance matters with him. He requested that he meet him the following night at 7:30 p.m. at 25 Menlove Gardens East. When Mr. Wallace arrived, BT recorded the message on a piece of paper and handed it to him. Given his spotty attendance and months of non-attendance, it's unclear why the caller was so certain he'd be there. Following the murder, a switchboard operator at the Liverpool Telephone Exchange assisted the police in tracing the call. It was broadcast from a phone booth just 400 yards from Wallace's house, near where he would have boarded the tram to get to the chess club. Wallace stated that he received the message about the caller and went in search of him. The following night, He took the tram from Anfield to Menlove Gardens at 7:06 p.m. His unusual behavior during the trip drew the attention of a number of witnesses who saw him as he walked around the southern part of Liverpool. The conductor and the ticket inspector were two such people whom he repeatedly reminded to tell him where he needed to get off for his stop. He seemed to want to impress on them that he was a complete stranger to this part of town, telling them over and over about the call from R.M. Qualtrough and the time he was supposed to meet him. After exiting the tram, he continued to stop residents, news agents, and even a police officer he saw on duty, asking each for assistance in locating the location of his mysterious appointment. There was only one problem. There was no Menlove Gardens East, which became clear as the appointment time approached. Despite the fact that there are several Menlove Gardens in the area, the streets are only listed as North, South, and West. There was never one with a designation East. Wallace returned home after realizing he had wasted his time looking for an address that didn't exist on a cold winter's night. He was well covered with people who had seen him out and about that night due to his strange behavior on the way to the appointment. There was also a sighting of him on the way back home. Lillian Hall, a young typist, said she saw Wallace around 8:35 p.m. He was talking to another man on Richmond Road near his home at 29 Wolverton Street in Anfield, she said. Shortly after, John and Florence Johnston noticed Mr. Wallace, who appeared to be stranded outside his home. They could tell he was perplexed and stopped to see what was going on. He informed them that neither the front nor back doors would open. He stated that the locks would not budge and inquired as to whether they had heard anything unusual that night. In an attempt to assist him, the Johnston accompanied him around to the back of his home, where he was able to unlock the door with no problem. After entering his house and lighting a lamp to see better in the darkness, Mr. Wallace returned to where the Johnstons were waiting and said, "Oh, come and see, she was murdered." The Johnstons entered the house and discovered Julia splayed out in front of a gas fireplace in the sitting room. She had been bludgeoned to death. The room would have been a nightmare to look at. There was not only Julia's savage body lying in a pool of blood, but there were also blood splatters on nearby walls. Mr. Wallace stood gawking at his wife's body before turning back to the Johnstons and stated, "They've finished her. Look at her brains." According to all appearances, this was the result of a botched burglary. Mr. Wallace's locked kitchen cupboard, where he kept his insurance money, had been broken into and the cash had gone missing. That was the only thing that was missing. Nothing else from the house appeared to have been taken, not even Julia's handbag. It didn't appear to have been tampered with in any way. The only other sign of a disturbance was in the bedroom, which seemed to have been rifled through. There was a serial burglar in the area at the time of Julia's murder. Locals had dubbed him the Anfield Housebreaker. This, however, contradicted the other crimes he had committed in the area. John Johnston immediately contacted Merseyside Police, who arrived to conduct an investigation. It didn't take long for them to realize that Mr. Wallace was the most obvious suspect in this case. Of course, their handling of the case was inadequate. A large strike in 1919 had left the force severely understaffed. Many officers were filling roles for which they were unqualified and ill-equipped. In the absence of a police photographer, a journalist from the Liverpool Daily Post was tasked with photographing the crime scene. The images he captured are haunting, a gruesome reminder of what happened. A forensics expert from Liverpool University, John Edward Whitley McFall, was called in to determine the time and cause of death. Mr. McFall estimated that she would have died around 8 p.m., much earlier than Mr. Wallace had returned home from his wild goose chase, based on the early methods of determining this, based on the stage of rigor mortis that had set in. This, of course, provided him with a perfect alibi. A more thorough examination of Julia's body revealed that she had been severely beaten about the head with a blunt object, with the most severe blows occurring around the left ear, where brain tissue could be seen protruding from the skull. The fatal blows were most likely delivered while she was lying face down on the floor in front of the fire. Due to the singeing of her dress and the partial burning of the Macintosh coat, police believed she must have brushed against the fire as she fell. When someone is murdered, spouses and partners are always obvious suspects. But in the case of Julia Wallace, her husband appeared to have the perfect alibi. The tram conductor and ticket inspector both put him on the tram at 7:06 p.m., and multiple witnesses saw him in the Manlove Gardens area around the time his wife was murdered. Furthermore, witnesses in Anfield claim to have seen Julia around 6:30 or 6:45 p.m. Even if the time of death was slightly off, Mr. Wallace would have had only 15 minutes to murder Julia, wash off the blood, change clothes, and catch the tram. An examination of the house drains revealed that they had not been used that night, implying that the killer would have had to flee covered in blood splatter, locking the doors behind him. Wallace made 2 voluntary statements up until his arrest 2 weeks later, but he was never intensively questioned by the police. Despite the fact that he was required to attend CID headquarters every day and was asked specific questions about whether the Wallaces had a maid, why he had asked the man who had taken the phone message at the chess club to be specific about the time he took it, and so on, and whether he had spoken to anyone on the street on his way back to his house after his failed search for Mr. Qualtrough. The police had evidence that the telephone box used by Qualtrough to call the chess club was only 400 yards from Wallace's office, despite the fact that the person who answered the phone in the cafe was certain it was not Wallace on the other end of the line. Despite this, the cops began to suspect that Qualtrough and Wallace were the same person. Wallace's legal team conducted timing tests that revealed it was possible for someone to make the call, catch a tram, and arrive at the chess club at the same time Wallace did. And it was also possible for Wallace to arrive at the same time by boarding at the stop he claimed he used, which was nowhere near the telephone box. The police were also convinced that Wallace could have murdered his wife and still arrive at the location where he boarded his tram. They attempted to demonstrate this by having a fit young detective go through the motion of the murder and then sprint all the way to the tram stop, something an ailing 52-year-old Wallace probably couldn't do. The original assessment of the time of death around 8 p.m. was also later changed to just after 6:30 p.m., although there was no additional evidence on which to base the earlier timing. Given the brutal and frenzied nature of the assault, forensic examination of the crime scene revealed that Julia's attacker was likely to have been heavily contaminated with her blood. Wallace's suit, which she was wearing the night of the murder, was thoroughly examined, but no bloodstains were discovered. The police hypothesized that a Macintosh, which was mysteriously discovered beneath Julia's body, had been used by a naked Wallace to shield himself from blood spatter while committing the crime. The bath and drains had not been used recently, and there was no trace of blood except for a single tiny clot in the toilet pan, the origin of which could not be determined. Wallace consistently denied any involvement in the crime, but he was charged with murder and stood trial at Liverpool Assizes on April 22, 1931. Following a secret mock trial in London, which found Wallace not guilty unanimously, the Prudential Staff Union, in an unprecedented move, sponsored his defense. Despite the fact that the evidence against him was purely circumstantial, and despite the statement of a local milk delivery boy who was certain he had spoken to Julia only minutes before her husband had to leave to catch his tram, Wallace was found guilty after an hour of deliberation by the Liverpool jury, sentenced to death by hanging, and given an execution date for the following month. An immediate appeal was filed because the evidence did not support the verdict. Mr. Wallace was granted his freedom by the Court of Criminal Appeal in London. Wallace returned to his job in insurance after his appeal was successful, but public opinion in the areas where he lived and worked was strongly of the opinion that he was guilty and he had gotten away with it. Many of Wallace's previous customers avoided him. He received hate mail and physical threats and was forced to take a clerical job at his employer's headquarters. Because of this, he relocated to a bungalow in Bramborough, Merseyside. William Herbert Wallace died at Clatterbridge Hospital less than 2 years after his appeal and release from complications related to his kidney disease. He was laid to rest in Anfield Cemetery. The case remains open to this day with the Merseyside Police. Hey everyone, I just wanted to say that I am incredibly grateful that you took time out of your schedule to listen to my narration. This is Nikki of Twisted Mind, wishing you a great rest of your day. Salamat.